Hi, my name is Chris Cleland. I am a certified financial planner with American Senior Benefits, a division of Integrity Marketing with offices throughout New England. We're here today to make a series of videos concerning the 4 topics that keep our clients up at night. They are Medicare financial planning, retirement income planning, estate planning, and chronic illness or Medicaid planning. We hope you enjoy these videos.
Al Fascini here with American Senior Benefits, Regional Manager, and here with my colleague Chris Cleland, Certified Financial Planner. Today's topic is going to be chronic illnesses and how that affects your retirement. When you live a long life, you will become chronically ill before you pass, and some of the planning techniques that we utilize. So with that, I'm going to introduce my colleague Chris Cleland.
So chronic illnesses, we're going to start off talking about what is a chronic illness, how we define a chronic illness, and what we can do. What are the typical planning techniques that we can employ today for that? So some of the chronic illnesses that we deal with are liver problems, kidney problems, but the 2 biggest ones are
Dementia.
Alzheimer's and dementia, right?
Dementia, unequivocally. 50% of the population over age 85 has some start of dementia, which is a terrifying statistic. And they might pass away before they ultimately need care, but that's a big number. It's really a big number.
It is a big number, and probably 90% of the cases that we deal with on Medicaid planning and long-term care planning have to deal with Alzheimer's and dementia, people going into skilled nursing or assisted living facilities with memory care issues.
Sure. And, it's so interesting. I've been in the financial service business since 1985. And when I started early on, how we planned for preparing for a chronic illness was through long-term care insurance, where long-term care insurance has become almost no part of our planning practice, simply due to the fact, number one, long-term care costs for the insurance side has become extremely expensive. And what we've also found is rate increases, consistently take place with long-term care insurance. And then the third thing is, you can actually go broke buying enough insurance to really protect your assets. So that's really probably the biggest problem with long-term care insurance. So you may want to mention, Chris, legal planning and how important of a part that is.
So in the financial planning aspect, we have legal planning, we have insurance costs, which you mentioned. We should go back to that a little bit, and we have taking your retirement portfolio and tucking a piece of it away. But when we get into the numbers, we're going to find out that that's not really probably feasible for the 95% of the folks that are doing this stuff. So legal planning really involves 5 steps, right? You need to know what your medical situation is or could be. You need to know what the legal plan, usually the 5 documents in a legal plan: wills, powers of attorney, medical directives, those types of things. And then from there, you're into the actual financial plan. What kind of assets do you have? How do you hold them? Are they qualified, non-qualified? So how can we arrange that portfolio to take place or to handle a long-term care event?
And if I can mention, Chris, if you don't mind, where I see the biggest mistakes is people just don't have simple documents. Having a power of attorney, people don't realize the importance of power of attorney. We have a couple of situations right now where there are no power of attorneys in place, where clients have the inability to switch the assets around and move them to the community spouse, where we can actually protect those assets from spend down. We have the inability to do that because there's no way to sign off. And I think it's just such a simple piece that everyone needs those basic documents, but yet most of the people we see do not.
Everybody thinks it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me until it happens to me.
Yes.
And as you said, we're dealing with cases right now where I think one of us is going to have to go stand in as a notary and kind of peek around the corner to see if this lady comes out of a coma so that she can sign a power of attorney and or the deed of the house over, or she's not going to get the care that she needs, and they're going to lose. The family's going to lose money.
And I have a particular situation. We're both working on a case where there is no power of attorney, and the facility appointed a conservator. And the challenges with a conservator, everything has to go through the probate court. So the probate court is going to struggle allowing assets to transition to the community spouse to protect them. So it's just so interesting. You would think those simple documents would be in place on more individuals. And I think today there's more and more of an awareness simply due to the fact of the coronavirus and COVID-19. People are more concerned about making sure that my assets are protected. People are more concerned about making sure I have a will. People are more concerned, do I have a healthcare representative? All those things, you cannot be understated. They're probably the most important part of financial planning, and there's not a lot of financial advisors that help people through the overwhelming issues that people are going to face if they live a long life, which is so interesting. It all has to go together. Income planning, healthcare planning, but also planning for your inevitable longevity and living a long life, because you will become chronically ill before you pass away. And a lot of times people don't associate longevity with chronic illnesses. Like I'll hear all the time, oh, well, my mother lived to 94. So why don't you tell me about the last 2 years or the last 3 years of her life? Oh yeah, she was in a nursing home for 3.5 years. So they don't associate chronic illnesses with longevity, and it all goes together.
Well, I don't know. I think I have chronic pain. I think if that might lead up to chronic illness. But we go back to the the other two documents that are part of that lineup are living will and HIPAA agreement, right? Which,
do I want to be put on life support? If there's no opportunity for me to live through that life support, why would I want to be put on life support? And there has to be an individual that's a healthcare representative that'll act on your behalf. There has to be legal documents in place to support your wishes. So it's just so important.
So let's go back to the insurance planning. I know we're dealing with a lot of cases right now. There's how many different types of insurance plans? You have straight long-term care. You have hybrid long-term care with life insurance, and then we have some riders that we can add on to some annuity type contracts. I think that's about it, right?
And again, the biggest challenge is if it is a catastrophic chronic illness, all those insurance products don't really help. They just prolong the inevitable reality that they're going to eventually have to spend down. They could make a big difference on spending down, but in an event that it is a long-term chronic illness, dementia, Alzheimer's, the average length of time that someone might need care with Alzheimer's and dementia is over 8 years. 8 years. So very rarely will I find a plan today that will cover an individual for 8 years. So it all has to go together.
Right.
It all goes together. The hybrid products, the long-term care planning, the long-term care products, but also making sure that your legal documents and your affairs are in order.
You could ladder some of those as well. Like we've seen those type of plans. We've seen people ladder their financial plans with a little bit of private pay, with a little bit of long-term care, and with a little bit of legal planning.
Yes.
But if it gets to the point where this is looks like an 8-year run or a 7-year run on a plan, then we're talking about Medicaid planning.
Sure.
Right? We're talking about testamentary trust. We're talking about transferring assets over to a community spouse. We're creating a half-loaf scenario with the family so that they can at least maintain maybe 50 to 70% of their assets in that regard.
Or a lot of it says 100% of their assets. And a lot of the plans that we put in effect, it's literally protecting everything. Everything, even if they do the planning at the last minute, if some basic documents are in place, in a lot of instances, in 1 month, we can get someone on Medicaid. It's just very interesting. And, what people don't realize, there's terms that the state of Connecticut uses for Medicaid planning, like the community spouse. Connecticut is not a community property state, but what's so interesting is all assets are considered community property for the purposes of Title 19.
Right.
People don't realize that if I have a 401k, well, that's part of the spend down if your spouse needs care. People don't realize if I have cash value life insurance, it's kind of interesting. If I can just mention, one of the reasons why I started focusing in on long-term care planning and protecting assets, I started out my career in Prudential Insurance. 1985 I started, and the shocking part is when individuals would come in to cash in their life insurance policies that they had for 30 years because they were going through spend down and they can only keep $1,600 of assets when they need care. And I said, I can't believe that you're unable to keep those assets.
Right.
You had that policy for 30 years and now you're needing care, and that entire policy has to be cash surrendered or shifted over to the other spouse. Yes, and that was one of my biggest driving forces to get involved in retirement planning and making sure that clients at least have a complete and total understanding of what they can do.
And even when they do, sometimes the frustrating part of this is, and I know you and I have been through a ton of meetings with people where you explain to them, if we shift assets to income for the community stay-at-home spouse, we can protect 100% of the assets that you've accumulated over your lifetime. It's a great thing. And they look at you and they say, what? Well, let me think about it.
Sure.
And the most amazing look
yes.
Comes over my face. I'm just looking at myself going, what choice do you have?
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. There aren't any other choices. It's when you're doing Medicaid planning, assets are considered joint for the purposes of Title 19, and they're exempt assets. Like the house is an exempt asset, a prepaid funeral is an exempt asset, one car is an exempt asset, and a certain amount of assets left to the community spouse is an exempt asset. But what's interesting, the community spouse will never be asked to pay for the institutionalized spouse's care from income. So it's entirely exempt. If you have a $10,000 a month pension, a $15,000 a month pension, you will never be asked to pay for your spouse's care through income, which is amazing. And that's the biggest opportunity that exists when you're doing Medicaid planning.
And we can create income out of just about anything.
That's correct. And what people don't realize when we talk about long-term care, we're not only talking about institutional care, but Connecticut has a fantastic home care program, which will give care within the home. So it's not just institutionalized care. And when someone qualifies for home care, they're automatically qualified for institutional care.
Right.
When they're qualified for institutional care Medicaid, they're automatically qualified for home care. So, this type of planning is not just for those individuals that are, sitting in a nursing home. Absolutely not. Right. It's anyone that needs help with their activities of daily living, and there's no ability to, get those services, or those services have worn out the family members, which primarily those are the caregivers for individuals with chronic care. It's usually statistically a spouse, but if there's no spouse, it's statistically a daughter who doesn't get help from other siblings, and the burden is placed on one child. And, it's interesting when you look at the cost, I was reading an interesting article from the Alzheimer's Association where Alzheimer's costs our society $100 billion a year in cost, of which $30 billion is the cost of a caregiver. Caregivers losing opportunities for raises because they're no longer able to go to work, losing opportunities for divorces go up. Sorry, not even losing opportunity. I'm sorry, divorces. Caregivers have health issues because the stress involved. It's just so interesting. So when you look at the cost of long-term care, it's not just the pure cost of needing care, it's the cost of family members.
The ancillary stuff. It's the fastest growing health concern in the United States today. Yeah. Typically, of the chronic illnesses, 75% of the people that have a chronic illness are in that genre of Alzheimer's or dementia or memory care debilitation, one way or the other.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, Chris.
So chronic care is if we were to wrap it all up, I think it involves so many different pieces. People that want to have, I think statistically on a portfolio, what do you think somebody needs to squirrel away today? If they're, let's say, 55 years old, how much do you think they would need?
That's an interesting number.
How much would you think they would need to save today at just a nominal rate of return, 3 or 4%, to offset the cost maybe 30 years from now? And we just did that exercise.
I almost think that's an impossible number, simply due to the fact today when our clients or my clients and your clients retire, they need all their assets to generate the income so they can live the lifestyle that they're accustomed to.
Right.
There's not a lot of discretionary income. So that's what I find. And, that portfolio was never designed to cover long-term care costs at a rate of 14, 15, 16, 17,000 a month. It's interesting, you can pay that 1 month, that second month, that third month.
Begins to hurt.
but right around that fourth and fifth month, it becomes incredibly painful, which you actually start resenting that spouse, which is unimaginable.
Right.
Which is unimaginable. And again, making sure you have a plan in place, because unfortunately, you do have a plan by default, and that's spending down your assets if there's no plan in place.
So we did a little exercise, I think, earlier today or yesterday, and it was, if you're going to spend $100,000, which is not even close to the number, I don't know why I'm looking at you. I don't know if we spend $100,000 today in 30 years, that at just a 3% run rate on the rate of inflation, it's going to be a $300,000 number.
Yeah,
So 3 times what you put in today. You have to have that 3 times that number if you're going to use a portfolio. And we're looking at 8 years. Right now, it's $150,000 or more per year.
Sure, it's an unimaginable number. Again, very few individuals can self-fund the cost of long-term care. And the biggest challenge with long-term care costs, it's going up 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation. The average cost of facility care has gone up more than 5% a year over the last 20 years, which is an unimaginable number. It's just so interesting. And again, it's definitely our passion where we can really make a difference and impact people in such a positive way. Just educating individuals how to get your affairs in order, making sure you have the right legal documents, making sure that you understand your options. What you don't know can truly cost you your life savings. And again, it's the planning that can truly be impactful. You have your money managers. Everyone can get you a great rate of return when the market's doing great. But again, we look at that holistic picture,
right,
making sure that every part of retirement planning is in place.
Chronic illness, really, if you're blessed with longevity, you're probably going to be blessed with chronic illness as well somewhere down the road.
And that chronic illness can last 2 weeks and it can last 8 years. And that's the biggest challenge. That's the biggest challenge. You have the inability to plan for what you don't know.
So if you were to give somebody a priority list, would it be you'd start with legal planning first and insurance planning and then portfolio planning, or would you try to bundle it all together?
I would absolutely bundle it all together.
Yeah.
It does go together. It should never be separated. Because when you don't do your entire comprehensive planning,
right,
you usually put things off. You put it on the back burner, and when you put things on the back burner, you forget about them. It falls off the stove. And it's just not an option. It's just not an option. So it all goes together. Having that holistic approach is paramount in retirement planning. And again, I can't tell you, very few, if ever, do I find a client that's all set. And, I ask myself, how could that be? I'm dealing with a financial advisor,
right,
but yet, that financial advisor is looking at one aspect and one aspect only. And that's what I think we pride ourselves on, is our knowledge, our capability, and our drive to making sure that your affairs are in order. Again, it's what I'm passionate about. It's what you're passionate about.
We do it every day.
Our entire agency's passionate about.
We do it every day. My wife's from Waterbury, and she said, I don't need a long-term plan.
Yeah, and she's probably right, because the crime rate in Waterbury will probably do you in before you end up ultimately needing care. But that's probably true.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a plan, and people don't even realize the simplest will. If you don't have a will, the state of Connecticut has a will for you.
Yeah.
And that's dying intestate. And dying intestate, what that means, if you have assets over $100,000, anything beyond $100,000, your children would split it with your spouse. So that's amazing. And a lot of times plans are in conflict with beneficiaries and 401ks, and assets are going to the wrong place. There's no smooth, cohesive plan that needs to come together.
How many times do we sit down with somebody and we found out that they have a significant amount of assets, but they're everywhere?
Everywhere.
They're everywhere. And then try to get them to, and a lot of times we feel that people are looking at their own mortality when we sit down and we talk to them and say, okay, we need to gather all these things together so we can understand what it is that you're looking at. And I think it's just an aversion a lot of times to people that are looking at growing older.
Well, it's absolutely, and I think the biggest challenge is nobody ever feels their age. until they become sick.
Right.
You know, Chris,
absolutely.
you being your age, I'm sure if you have no chronic illnesses or, you feel great, you don't feel your age. I don't feel your age, my age. I feel like I felt when I was 20 years old, which is so interesting. So again, and that's how individuals think. That's never going to happen to me, or that's going to happen to another person.
Right.
Women have a 79% chance of needing care at some point in their life. 79% of women will need care. Men are a lot less, are 43%, simply due to the fact men don't live as long.
Right.
So it's longevity is your biggest risk factor in retirement.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Longevity is actually a risk multiplier when you retire. The longer you live, the bigger the probability that you're going to need chronic care or care to protect you.
Right.
The other thing is with longevity, the bigger the chances you'll go through multiple market corrections. Inflation's going to decimate your portfolio. There's so many risks in retirement that are associated with.
You're going to take money out at the wrong time.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. So all of those things, I think, add up to making sure that you have some kind of chronic illness plan in place, or maybe we don't call it chronic illness. Maybe we just call it long-term financial planning.
Yeah, just have your wills in place, your power of attorney in place, understanding what needs to be done should someone become incompetent or incapacitated. Just making sure that someone knows and understands the plan.
Yeah.
And you know what's so interesting? I always felt that children would be a part of the planning process. What I found today is that children aren't a part of the process, because the children's comments are immediately going to be, Mom, Dad, we're going to take care of you. Don't worry. But the reality is that's not practical and it's not logical.
Right.
Knowing that, you're married, you're both working, husband and wife are working, you have the inability to take care of a parent or, or an in-law. And even though you have the best intentions, but children have an aversion because they cannot imagine their parents needing any type of care at all.
Right.
But the reality is a lot different, So
It's true.
I think those are the challenges. People put it off till it's too late.
And it's never too late to do the planning.
No, I think that's it. I really appreciate everyone's time.
Yes.
And deal with an expert that can walk you through all the steps of planning, every aspect of retirement planning.
Well worth it.
Yes. Chris, I really appreciate your time.
Thank
And
you, Mr.
I hope
Fashini.
it wasn't overly boring. And, again, it's just understanding what you need to know. And even if you don't put a plan in place today, you know what you're able to do legally. I can't emphasize that enough.
All these topics are rather dry until they're staring you right in the face.
Exactly
and then
right.
they become very, very important.
Yes.
Thank you for watching these videos. If you'd like to find out more information and contact me or any of the experts here at American Senior Benefits in Farmington, please click on the link below.